Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, where we bring the people the other side of the story to what the state-backed media tells them. And today, Dr. Marina Sapozhnikov joins us to tell her side of a very controversial story. You may recognize her name as the former Conservative Party of BC MLA candidate for the Juan de Fuca Malahat riding, a riding that made many headlines, including for how close its race was. And after a recount, it went to the NDP candidate. But what probably stood out the most was the backlash the candidate, Dr. Marina Sapozhnikov, got after making comments that are offensive to Indigenous people, including referring to them in the past as savages, came out during an interview. She joins me now to tell you her side of the story, and I hope you appreciate that Rebel News was here to bring it to you.
And he asked for an interview as a student of VIU. And she told me that it was a school assignment, and as well she told me that she was a Russian-speaking expat. I was very, very tired, and I felt sorry for her, kind of, and I agreed to this interview. So at any point, I did not know that I was recorded. So we didn't talk about any election topics. There was some personal conversation, very disjointed, and definitely doesn't pretend to any depth or comprehension or anything like this. We're just chatting. And my friends came into the room several times during the whole conversation, probably lasted half an hour or longer. And they asked me what I was doing there, and I just told them that we were just chatting and we were not recording it.
The part that I think most people are taking offense to is what many consider a racial slur. It's definitely offensive in 2024, and that is the following reference here.
They didn't have any sophisticated laws. They were savages. They fought each other all the time.
So that was clearly my ignorance about the word, and this is where my language barrier comes. I knew this word, but I was not aware of the whole full meaning and the emotional charge that it carries or its historical context. It was absolutely new for me, and I used it as a descriptive term, which meant something like unsophisticated people living in the wild. And in my memory, this word didn't have any negative connotation. So that probably for most people it would seem kind of unimaginable, but that's where I was. I looked it up actually, and even after I looked up this word with the other meanings attached to it, it still nowhere appeared that it was a racial slur. So I never meant it this way, and I was not aware of it.
Europeans brought science here. Now they teach you that some kind of indigenous knowledge. What is indigenous knowledge?
So what about that?
So the indigenous knowledge is a new concept that I encountered in the last few years, and I'm very curious about it. And I asked many patients, I call people patients after so many years. I asked many people about any specifics that is related to indigenous knowledge, to explain me what is different about indigenous knowledge versus knowledge in general. And I have been looking and trying to understand it, and so far I have not found any specifics that in which way indigenous knowledge differs from knowledge in general. So I'm not saying it isn't. I just try to figure out what it is.
Now, there is no doubt that when European colonization came, There were some things that were horrible for the Indigenous people, but some things that were good. It's a certain technology. I guess that's one of the things that you're mentioning. The laws are different. Before that, the laws would have been more cultural norms and the language would have been passed down orally. So just different ways of doing things. But another thing that is being published that you said, or that is claiming that you said, because I will say in nowhere was I able to find an actual audio clip of you saying it, but it relates to Indigenous people today. And the claim is that you stated this.
She also said, quote, that 90% of Indigenous people use drugs.
Where did you get that stat from?
So first of all, I don't believe I said that because this is statistic that I am not aware of. And being using statistic all my life, I'm very careful about how I use them, and I don't just throw around statistics loosely. So I would like to hear to the recording, but I don't believe I said that.
Well, very interesting enough. I already mentioned that I couldn't find an audio of you saying that, but I did find an audio or a claim that there was an audio. If you look at APTN News, they claim that you did mention 90%, but it had nothing to do with drugs. Instead, they're saying you said this.
But they weren't savages either.
Not 100% savages, maybe 90% savages.
But let's talk about what this meant for the party. The votes were already in. You, in your riding, Juan de Fuca Malahat, was very close. After the recount, it did go to the NDP seat. But of course, people were going to the Conservative Party of BC to say, what now?
Well, I don't think we have that many candidates that have the controversial comments. There might be one or two in terms of it. But what we need to be doing going forward here is making sure that we provide the training and support for our candidates to get up to speed.
In some ways, it almost looked like the claims of bigotry and extremism and racism that are very unfounded, that I've reported on many times when it comes to the party. It almost seemed like the media got their little nugget here with this situation. I'm going to read your leader's comment, or the Conservative Party, John Rusted's comment. He said he was saddened and appalled. And in a press release, he said, and quote, I find her comments that she made quite offensive, and certainly they're not part of who I am or who we are as a party. And I can tell you that she will not be a candidate for this party going forward should there be a snap election. So what are your thoughts about Rusted's words? How did you interpret that?
Actually, the party reached out to me when the whole situation happened, and I was not in any condition to answer any questions, and I was in such a profound shock and disbelief, and the whole world was crumbling around me. So I just asked them to say whatever they have to say, and I cut myself loose of the party because the party has a bigger purpose, and I will deal with this situation on my own, and the party will move on. But as far as I'm fully prepared to admit my ignorance and admit my mistakes, I definitely will never admit to having and holding any of these vile feelings that people attributed to me and accused me of. And people that engage in this online outrage that don't know first thing about me, and they're drunk on their own sense of moral superiority, they should maybe take a moment and reflect, because while they're doing whatever they're doing, I spent decades literally treating people and saving lives in most extreme situations. And I treated thousands of people, including Indigenous people, and we were always respectful to each other. Many people reached out to me, people that know me, and we were able to discuss this issue, and I explained what I said and why I said that, and the point that I was trying to make. And there are quite a few Indigenous people who reached out to me that they were able to see through all this, and they were totally, completely aware that my comments were not racial, and they were not demeaning for Indigenous people, and we were able to communicate. Because the reason I'm here speaking out and telling my side of the story is I need to stand up to cancel culture, because I would not give the cancel culture the satisfaction to beat me into submission, because I completely admit to being ignorant and making a mistake. But if I don't speak and I don't ask question and this mistake does not come out, then I wouldn't be able even to know that I made a mistake. And the questions will not be able to be answered. And people will not be able to communicate and clear the air. So the divide is going to only deepen when people cannot communicate. So we have to, I stand up for my right to make a mistake and to ask a question without being accused of the worst intention possible. And for many people, these things, like many people had their lives destroyed by the cancel culture. The point that I was trying to get across, as awkward as it came across, is that in any situation, we need to have the whole picture. And the whole picture can never be racist and cannot be, it can be, people can be ignorant. But the facts are facts. If I said the wrong fact, we can discuss the fact. I did not mean to offend anybody, and I really, really apologize that I hurt people. That was definitely not my intent. My intent has always been and is, and I will keep trying to make this point across. We need to tell people the whole picture. Whatever happened in the past, whatever is happening now, we need to know the whole picture. And that's the point that I was trying to make.
After conducting this interview, I did hear back from Miss Latsanik, the VIU student who captured the recording for her school assignment. She tells Rebel News that the recording was not done in secret. In quote, she says that she, meaning Marina, made all the racist remarks when she knew she was being recorded, which makes it so much worse, she says. Now, again, Marina says she was tired and backed out of the interview, so whether that's a misunderstanding or something else, I am unsure. Miss Latsanik did not agree to release the full recording to Rebel News as requested at this time. At Rebel News, we don't back down from bringing you the other side of the story, whether you love it or hate it. If you appreciate and want to be a part of the small group of people that makes that possible in a country where 95% of media outlets take money from the state to bring you their reports, please consider supporting our election coverage, which, by the way, is still happening with all the weird things happening with the count. You can do so by going to our special website called bcdecides.com and chip in what you can.